You know, we all have an origin story. But forget how your parents met for a second. Your real origin story? Well, that's a microscopic epic. Today, we're going to rewind the clock all the way back to the very, very beginning. We're talking about the incredible blueprint of you and how it was all drafted in just the first 3 weeks of life.
I mean, really think about it for a second. How does a single, tiny cell build a complete human being? It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But this isn't a movie. This is the biological reality for every single one of us. And it all boils down to this one simple, but honestly profound question.
And here's the crazy part. The answer to that huge question isn't found over months or years. Nope. The entire master plan for your body, it's written in just 3 weeks. It's this incredibly intense period of explosive, super organized activity that literally sets the stage for everything else. So, you know what? Let's break it down week by week.
All right, let's dive into the first act of the story, week 1. This is where we go from just one single cell to a whole crowd of them. And it happens in what is, biologically speaking, the blink of an eye.
Okay, so the starting gun for this whole race is fertilization. It's that one specific moment when a sperm and an oocyte, or egg, join together. And boom, this fusion creates one brand new cell. And inside that cell, every single genetic instruction needed to build a person. This right here, this is ground zero.
Now, what happens next is just mind-blowing in its speed and precision. About 30 hours later, that one cell splits into 2. We call these blastomeres, but it doesn't stop there, not even close. After a few more rounds of division, you get a solid little ball of 16 cells. That's the morula. And by the end of the week, those cells do something amazing. They reorganize themselves to create a hollow structure, the blastocyst. It's just this perfectly timed, cascading series of divisions.
But here's the thing. This isn't just mindless copying and pasting. Even at this super early, tiny stage, cells are already getting jobs. The blastocyst has 2 totally distinct parts. You've got the outer cells. Think of them as the support crew. They're going to form the placenta. And then you have the inner cells. This is the star of the show because that's what will become the embryo itself. The roles are already being assigned.
So we have this incredible little ball of cells, but it can't just float around forever, right? It needs a home. And maybe even more importantly, it needs a source of nutrition. And that brings us to the next absolutely critical phase, implantation. It's time to make a connection.
And really, you can think of this as the embryo's first major survival test. The blastocyst has to successfully implant itself, burrowing into the lining of the uterus. And remember those outer cells we mentioned, the support crew? Well, this is where they really get to work, establishing the connection that's going to become the lifeline for the next 9 months.
You know, this whole process is so incredibly precise, which naturally makes you wonder, what happens when things don't go exactly according to plan? What if it implants in the wrong spot? And this isn't just some hypothetical question. It has really serious real-world consequences. And this is why location is absolutely everything. For instance, if the embryo implants way too low in the uterus, it can lead to a condition called placenta previa. What happens then is the placenta can actually cover the cervix, which makes it really vulnerable to damage and can cause serious bleeding later on. So it's not just that it implants, but where it implants that is so, so important.
Okay, so we've covered the rapid divisions of week 1 and the crucial implantation in week 2. Now we arrive at what I think is the main event, the great cellular migration. Week 3, this is where the real architectural magic happens. This is where we go from a simple disk of cells to something truly complex.
And this amazing transformation has a name. It's called gastration.
Basically, it's this incredibly organized process where that simple 2-layer disk of cells completely rearranges itself into a much more complex 3-layered structure. And trust me, this is way more than just stacking cells on top of each other. This is the moment the fundamental body plan for an entire human being gets laid down. So you have to be asking, how on earth does this happen? How do all of these cells know exactly where to go? Well, this incredible cellular ballet, it has a director. It's a structure called the primitive streak. The best way to picture it is like a little groove on the surface of the embryo that acts as the main staging area for this whole migration. So this ballet happens in 3 key moves. First, you have migration. Cells from the top layer start moving towards the primitive streak. Step 2 is invagination, a cool word for what happens next. The migrating cells literally dive down through the streak to form new layers below. And finally, as they're making this journey, they differentiate. They transform into one of 3 totally distinct layers, and each one has its own unique destiny.
So, what's the whole point of all this complex cellular choreography? Why all the movement? It's all to create the 3 layers of you. This is the foundational blueprint, the master plan from which every single organ and tissue in your body will eventually be built. And these 3 layers basically map out our entire future. You've got the ectoderm, that's the outer layer. It's going to form our nervous system, our skin, our eyes. Then there's the mesoderm, the middle layer. That's the construction crew for our skeleton, our muscles, our entire circulatory system. And finally, the endoderm, the innermost layer. That becomes the linings of our digestive and respiratory systems. I mean, think about that. Every single part of you can be traced right back to one of these 3 original layers. So let's just recap. In only 3 weeks, a single cell divides, it implants, and it completely reorganizes itself into this complex, 3-layered blueprint that's ready to build an entire person. It's an absolutely astonishing process, and it leads to a pretty profound thought, doesn't it? Every human journey, your journey, begins right here, in a microscopic ballet that writes the blueprint of a lifetime.